Gerardo, he's a dumbass bitch. Gerardo, watch him if you wish.
And the category is Spooky Bitch. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you notice, we are themed in October, which is all month of October for me is Halloween. It is my favorite holiday. And I want to do a series on my channel with a lot of spooky stuff that have happened in my life. I wanted to do a whole bunch of story times, and today I want to start this series with a very serious topic, but I decided to make it a little on the lighter note and, theme myself. And if you read the title of this video, I will be talking about the time my mom and dad both went to jail.
Lord have Damn, this is some scary shit.
Difficult and weird time for me and my family, and I want to get right into it. I do believe this topic with immigration and illegal immigrants and everything, with injustice and a lot of stuff that have happened in our society and are still very common today, happen every single day. And something similar to that has happened to me and my family, and I wanted to talk about it and sit down and make a video from it. And well, here we are, and let's get right into it. Let me get started with a little background on my family. Both my parents, were illegal immigrants, came to America. Both my parents have always had that mindset of being, their own bosses. They've always had their own businesses with, opening up stores, restaurants, food trucks, a whole bunch of stuff. They've always done something to be their own bosses. They've always had that mindset, and I do believe they are very blessed in everything they do. And some things happen in our lives, and I believe things happen for a reason, and they change us. They either help us in a good way, whatever it is. It humbles us, and I do believe the situation very changed the life of my whole family in a whole 360 way, but I do believe it did it for the better. This happened 6 years ago in 2013. I was going into my junior year. I was a week away from turning 17, and it was the ending of a little bit before this happened. They owned a store, and they stopped working with the store, they sold it, and they started a business with recycling. I feel like it's a very common thing, or it used to be. They recycled cans, plastic, scrap metal, all this type of stuff. They would go pick it up in different various areas in the city and places, and they had permits for it and everything. But what the main focus here was that they would take it from Reno to California, and that's when it all kind of just went downhill. My parents did it for a while, and they're like, the church we went to kind of came together, and both my parents and the church worked together, and that's how it all started. It was my parents, a couple of other people working all together, and the pastor from the church, and they all just did this business. They would all buy this scrap metal and all this type of stuff and get it together, and take it from one place to another and into California and all that stuff. And they did this for a while, and they mainly just that was their main job. Remy at the time was 21. Morelli was around 9, and my older sister was like 24 or something. We were all very young. We were all very, especially me, Aurelie, and Remy, we were all kind of just very dependent on my parents. So this situation definitely helped us grow, and, made us into a better person. And obviously, I'm not going to go into every detail, every bad situation we went through during that time. Mentally, it was a lot of more mentally, draining, my sister and everything. But I'm happy I have the siblings I do, because I don't think I would ever been able to survive this without them. And obviously I'm so happy for the family and my parents I have. So let me get started to how it all went down. One night, Sister Remy Aurelie, me, and my mom all slept in a room. My dad and my sister's boyfriend at the time went to California to go leave some of the product and, you know, work and whatever they did. It was always like an overnight thing. And we all slept in my mom's room that night, and it kind of just all kind of tied in together. I remember it was like 6 a.m. and I woke up and I had headphones in. I remember waking up and seeing my sister like coming up and down the room and crying, and my sister Remy, and she was like on the phone with I believe with her boyfriend, and she was crying. She's like, "What happened? Where's my dad? Is he okay? Are you guys okay? What's going on?" And then I remember like waking, like fully like getting all together, and my mom was on the phone with someone as well. She was crying and she was kind of like, okay, like we're gonna see what we're gonna do, what's gonna happen. And at that moment I already kind of thought, I'm like, well, something for sure happened, something has gone down. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know it was nothing good. Then my sister, you know, asked me to go with her to the bank, and she's like, I have to get money to bail blah blah blah, her boyfriend, out of jail. She's like, my dad's in jail with him. She's like, but he's on an ice hold, like we're not gonna be able to bail him out. And at the moment, like I just knew, I'm like, something, obviously this is not gonna end good. And you know, but I still had no idea how big this was gonna be. I was like, okay, well, my dad, you know, he's a strong person, he's a strong man. I know we'll be able to get through this. You know, my mom's here, we'll know what to do. So the day went on, me and my sister come back from the bank, and you know, my mom was already ready. She tells me to stay with my little sister at home. Her and Remy, we're gonna go to the pastor's house to see what they can do, what can happen. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I can all stay here. Fast forward a couple hours, like I think 2 hours passed on, and I hadn't heard from anyone yet. From my dad, from mom, no one. Me and my older sister were both home alone, and I hear a knock on my door, like a super like loud like knocking, and I'm like, what the hell is happening? And didn't even think to check, and it was my sister, my older sister, Dalia. She enters, like she busts into the house crying, and she's like, get your bag, get the car to the key, get the keys to the car. She's like, let's go. She's like, get her belly, get her backpack, get something. She's like, let's go. She goes to my mom's room and gets a couple stuff. I do believe she got like money from there or something. And she doesn't even explain one thing to me. She just kind of like rushes us to the car and leaves, and she's like, leave everything how it is, just take something, like whatever, a change of clothes or something. I'm like, okay, that's fine, like whatever. And I'm like, I'm in the car asking like, what's happening, what's going on? And she's like, you know, still crying, and she couldn't even talk. And she's like, my mom just got arrested. She's like, my mom, the pastor, two other people that work helped them out and work with them, all of them. She's like, they've been onto my parents for like 2 years. She's like, from what I know, this is what's going on. They're being charged with like 5 felonies for grand theft and all this type of stuff. And I was in the car like, what? I'm like, what do you mean, what? I'm like, grand theft for what? Like, what did my parents do? And I was like, I was completely lost. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, you know, and it all brings me back to kind of like how everything's like, you know, it all happens for a reason. You know, like my parents had to go through some stuff in order to, I feel like, you know, learn from the situation, and also it's helped my whole family. And so let me get back to the story. So, you know, we go to my sister Dalia's house, and we get there, and I still don't kind of know everything that's happening. And my sister's like, okay, well, she's like, we're gonna have to call Remy, we're gonna have to wait for her because she did leave to California already to try to bail my dad and her boyfriend out. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we gonna do with my mom? Like, why is she in jail? Like, what's happening? And she's like, well, I don't know exactly. She's like, but she said we'll call a bail place to see if they can bail her out, and blah blah blah. And so, you know, the whole day is just a whole mix up. Like, I remember everything clearly, but it's also kind of like, I feel like I was blacked out the whole time. It's something that I can't imagine, you know, happening. And me, Aurelie, and my sister and her husband and her kids all get in the car, and we leave to church.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Everybody got gathered up, and we get to the church, and everyone's like praying and crying, and some of our very close family friends are already there, and they start hugging me and crying, and I start crying, and I'm
wait, because I'm about to cry. Hold up.
like, why is everyone crying? I'm like, what's happening? And like, I'm over here freaking out, like, okay, something bad for sure is happening. Like,
look, she's crying. Do you hear her crying? Like we care. I don't give
this is like, it's not just like, you know, it's not something good. Once we were at the church, I kind of started, you know, hearing from everyone, well, you know, like apparently what your parents were doing was illegal, and they've been after you guys for a couple of years. They have pictures of you guys. We had just gone to a trip in LA with my family. They're like, they have pictures of you guys from over there. They've been tracking you guys since you guys came back from there. So they were gonna arrest you guys. They were gonna arrest your parents over there, but they waited till you guys got here. She's like, they've been, studying doing a case on your parents for blah 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 so much time. And I'm like, what? Like, I was so confused. I was literally like in shock. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what do you mean they've been doing a case on my parents? Like, what are they doing wrong? They're like, well, apparently the business they're doing was illegal. They've been it's legal here in Nevada, but they're not allowed to take it to California. And obviously my parents didn't know. It's a whole type of thing that I'll get into, but that's what was being pictured. And she's like, and I believe your dad's already on ice hold, and your mom, well, she's in jail. Like, we're gonna be able to see what we can do. And the pastor, he's also in jail, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, there I literally I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, what is happening? And all that day we were getting calls from a whole bunch of family members, and people that family doesn't even live here, people that live in other cities and states. And my family from Mexico. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, whatever. And the day goes on, and I remember my sister Dalia, she's like, okay, come with me to the house. She's like, we have to go pick up some stuff. And once we get back to my parents' house, like our house, we get there, and we kind of already see that the police had gone there. We knew that they had gone to take pictures. I do believe they took one of my parents' trucks or one of my parents' cars. A lot of stuff were missing. And my sister's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, this is a very big problem. She's like, I don't know how deep this is gonna happen or the type of investigation that's happening, but I'm worried. We were all very scared. We hadn't even talked to my sister that had left California. I didn't know much. And then as we were leaving, my parents had like a warehouse place where they did all that. They kept all the product and everything, where they worked. Very sad, because when we passed by there, there was a whole bunch of cops, surrounded the place, and they had like a huge U-Haul, or like a big huge like budget car, like loading up a whole bunch of stuff that my parents had done. And my sister's like, yeah, she's like, she's like, I don't know, she's like, we have to pray to God, we don't know what's happening. And fast forward throughout the day, it was getting like a little later in the afternoon, like at 6, and my mom finally calls from jail, and she's like, don't worry, like, we're gonna get through this. I don't know exactly what's happening. She's like, but she's like, I have been told that I can be released on bail, and blah blah blah. And my sister's like, okay, well, freaking out from there, we all go to like this bail bond. We go from one to another, trying to figure out what we can do, and we get to one that a bail that was like, okay, we can help you guys get your mom out. And the process was like 2 hours. I'm gonna give you guys like some price. Like, I know at the end, for that bail, my parents ended up having to pay $15,000 for just that bail to my mom to get out. My mom was able to get out that same night that she was arrested, and we were all thinking like, oh my gosh, okay, my mom's out. We're gonna be able to do this. She knows what to do. She knows how to go on from here. Little did we know, we didn't.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
My mom was out that night, but fast forward 2 days after that, she goes back to the place where they helped her get bailed out. Well, helped her, and we get there, and she gets there to sign some more papers that they had told her. And I actually wasn't there. My sister and my mom went, and they told her, they're like, oh, you missed one of your courts, right? And she's like, what? She's like, yeah. She's like, they basically said like, we didn't know you had a court, but either way, even though you didn't know, you missed it. And my mom was like, well, you guys didn't tell me, because that was your guys' job to tell me that court, that I had to go to that court, that, or whatever it was. And they're like, yeah, they're like, well, it's nothing we can do anymore, and we are by law forced to arrest you. So 2 days after my mom had gotten arrested and bailed, and literally had to pay the $15,000. I don't know exactly how it went down. I know it wasn't have to pay up front. It was like half of it, and then the other half, like a week or two later. But they ended up having to pay the whole thing, and my mom got arrested again because of a failure of the bail place to tell her that she had a court date. And my parents tried fighting that out later on, but that's a whole different type of thing. My mom did end up getting arrested that same night, and the 2 days after she got released from jail, she went back to jail. She ended up having to serve 2.5 months after that in jail, but she actually had to serve it in the California State Jail in Sacramento. She served, the state of California took over my parents' case because they said that what they were doing was illegal in California, so they had to take. Well, that's why my dad was arrested in California, and that's everyone from Reno was arrested to California, was sent to California. So throughout this time, we were completely lost. My older sister Dalia ended up having to take over. My younger sister Aurelia, the youngest one, which was like 9 at the time, Remy took over where we lived. She took over me basically. She mothered me, bitch. And I literally, during the whole time, I was helpless. I literally was like, what the fuck do I do? I was so, I was young. Had never had a job besides like always just helping my parents. My sister had never had, she hadn't worked. Between that time, she was going to school. She ended up having to find a job. I remember, she went to school from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then she went to work from 4 to 1 a.m. And she did that throughout the whole week. My parents, so to get the story situated, my parents had moved to California and they were in jail there. Me and my sister Remy were living together in the house. My older sister Dalia had took over Aurelie, and we were trying to figure our fucking shit out. We were selling shit left and right. Well, I wasn't selling. My sisters were taking control of everything. We were trying to figure out our living situation, what the fuck we were doing with our lives, and my parents were in jail. And I remember during that time I was having to go to school, and like I said, I've never really opened up about this with anyone. Like I had told a couple friends how like some stuff that had happened with my family, never really in depth. But I do remember like I had friends that I went to church with and I went to school with, and they all knew, obviously, because the church knew, and they all just kind of came up to me and were like, oh, are you okay? Like, a lot of them had always been there for me, and I never really even opened up to them. Like I remember closing out, like a lot of my friends, like a lot of people I knew would text me and be like, are you okay, blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I never wanted to talk about it because I felt very vulnerable and very lost. I didn't know what the hell to do, and that's just how I was, and that's how I process things. And it was a very sad time in my life, but I now go back to it and I'm like, things happen for a reason. And during that time, I wasn't able to go out to a lot of the courts that my parents had because I was underage. And so I remember the first court I was able to attend, it was in California, in Sacramento, and it was like in middle of October. And my sister took me, my older sister Dalia took me, and she's like, okay, she's like, well, when we go in there, she's like, you're gonna see my parents, and it's not gonna be a very good thing. She's like, they're charging them with like 5 different type of felonies. She's like, they're treating them like criminals. She's like, you'll never, don't picture them like this. My parents are not bad people. And I'm like, okay, she's like trying to prepare me for what I was about to see. And I remember walking into the courtroom and going in there, and there was like a whole bunch of people there, and at that time they had my parents in the front of the courtroom, and they were all the way in the front. And I remember walking in, and they were behind a door, and where they were inside, they were like in a cage. And I remember seeing them like in chains and like the whole outfit, and I remember just like bursting out crying. And even now I get like emotional thinking about it. Hold on, 'cause I'm about to cry. Even now I get a little emotional thinking about it because I think I'm like, I remember walking into there and being like, what is happening? Like, I could not believe my eyes, like having to see my parents in this situation, and having to go through all that stuff, and seeing my sisters completely broken. Like I just really I couldn't believe everything that was happening. And I remember during those courts, everybody would be like, there's not a lot of hope for your parents, I'm pretty sure they're gonna get deported. And the police, like they believe, like they were charging them with over like they were saying that they had sold from the city like over $100 million, or like $100,000, some bullshit like that. And even when we went to, I remember one of the lawyers we went to, they were like, what are they being charged with? It's like, I can't believe like this is like this isn't real. It's like they shouldn't be, like this should not be happening. It's like there's been a lot of cases where people, they just give them a fine or something, like it's not this big of a deal, like something's going on. And I remember like throughout those courts, I went to 2, and in one of them I remember seeing some people that my parents work with testifying against them to kind of take the load off of them. And that kind of grew a lot of anger in me. I was angry for a long time. I was very upset. with everything, like even with like my beliefs and everything, because I remember seeing these people. I'm like, you guys work with my parents, you guys did the same type of thing, and you guys are testifying against them so you guys can get some load off your back and everything. And it was just a whole different type of mess. And the holidays started coming into play. Thanksgiving happened. That was the first Thanksgiving we ever spent without my parents. Throughout those whole months, it was very hard, like living, which is me and my sister. I would get home and there was nobody home since my sister was going to school and work. I would be home alone like all night. And I remember at the time I would go over one of my friends. Her name is Mars. She knew about the situation and she never really asked questions. She just always kind of took care of me. I would go over to her house like 1 a.m. and I would be there, and she would make me quesadillas and we just spend time and always talk and laugh. And I never really, like I said, talked about this with anyone. Even like I remember a high school counselor found out about it and kind of talked to me about it, and I was like, oh, yeah, whatever. I just kind of ignored it. And I went on. Throughout this time, like I said, Remy, my sister, one of my older sisters, she took care of me. She always tried to make the situation a little better than what was happening. She always tried taking me out to eat. She is like really one of the strongest women I know, because like I said, she took over everything where we were living, everything. And I will always respect her for that. And I will I will always respect like anyone who gone through the situation. Like I said, I just not so long ago I saw a case about like some kids coming home from the first day of school and their parents had been deported and been arrested for literally just working and all this stuff. And I was already a little older, and I can't imagine what these kids are going through, getting home and not seeing her parents and all this stuff. And it brought me back to what I was going through and everything, and my little sister not having her parents there, and like all of us, like even no matter the age, like you will always need your parents. And the holidays started coming around. I remember Christmas came around, and I was even at the age to be super, like I was like trying to be rebellious and all this angry with everything that was happening. And I remember that Christmas Eve, my sisters were like, okay, well, let's just get together. She's like, let's try to have dinner all together. Let's try to forget it, but like we couldn't. I remember that night I got in a fight with my sister Remy because I was acting up, and I'm like, I don't want to go celebrate anything. Like, how can you guys want to celebrate anything with my parents being in jail? And she's like, well, we're not celebrating. She's like, we're just trying to spend time together as a family throughout this time. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. And I got in a big, huge argument with her, and I was just being a brat. But I remember even calling my aunt that night with and telling her, I'm like, let me move in with you, please. Like, the only aunt we had here in America, and like Reno. And I'm like, please let me move in with you. Like, I can't live with them no more, with my sisters. And I was just being dramatic. And Christmas Eve happened. We all kind of just gathered up. It was like a very weird thing. My sister still got me presents, and trying to make the situation even better, a little better, and all this stuff. And I remember the Christmas day, the next day, I called from my cousin. We got a call from one of my cousins, and she was like, oh, on Christmas Day, and she was like, hey, I know things aren't going so good. She's like, but we had to take my mom to the hospital, my aunt. She's like, she got very sick and she can't get up, and we don't know what to do. We had to take her to the hospital. And we're like, what the hell, what? And that's a whole other story I don't want to really get into, because I'll keep blabbing for another 30 minutes. But my aunt ended up getting pneumonia, and from all of that she ended up falling in a coma, and months later she ended up passing away. But that's a whole other story I'll probably do with one of my cousins or something, a whole different type of situation. But that all happened between when my parents were in jail. And I remember we couldn't tell my mom because like she's like, my parents are like older, and we were kind of like, we can't tell her, like she's gonna get sick, something, it's just not gonna go good. And when shit goes downhill, life just keeps shitting on you, because we were just kind of like, what the hell? Like, how we're going through this, and now this is happening to my aunt. And we had just had a meeting with one of the lawyers, and they were kind of just like, we don't really have a lot of hope for your parents. They don't want to remove the charges from them. They are facing 5 to 6 to 10 years in prison, or being deported and stuff like that. And we were already losing hope. We were just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen, and we were probably going to have to leave, or at least me and my little sister were probably going to have to leave to Mexico with them, because we weren't going to be able to live here without them. And that whole thing happened with my aunt on Christmas, and a couple days later it was gonna be New Year's, and I was like, oh, I can't believe we're going into New Year's without my parents. This is just horrible. Like, we had to tell my family. And on New Year's Eve, we were all at my older sister's house, and I remember we got a call like at 10 a.m., like super early, like not even 10, like 7 a.m. And they were like, they're like, we need you guys to come down to Sacramento because we are going to get your parents out of jail today. We got a call from one of the judges, and something happened, and they're gonna remove the charges, or they're gonna be able to get out on bail. And we were like, what? Like, we started freaking out. Both my older sisters leave to Sacramento, like literally immediately. They leave me there with the kids, and they run. And in my head, I'm like, okay, this is probably isn't real. It's probably like a fake call. They've already gone through so many courts and so many things, and they've already told us there's no hope for them. Everybody else that had gone to jail with them had already been out of jail for like months, like 2 or 3 months. Like, everyone only served for like 1.5 months. And my parents had been the ones who had been charged with the most, and like, been doing the most time. And I remember I was skeptical. I'm like, there's no way they're gonna be able to get out of jail. I'm like, I had like completely lost all my faith. And I do believe in miracles, and like I said, I do believe in God. And this was all like meant to happen. And I remember like, it was like 2 in the afternoon, and my sister calls me, and she's like, hey, I want you to talk to my parents. And I'm like, what? And I remember like answering the phone, and it was my mom, and I was like, started like bawling out. And I started like crying, and I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is really happening. I'm like, it really is. Like, they really were able to get out. And they never even really told me exactly how it all went down or what happened. But I do remember they got back to Reno like at 5 p.m. and they were pulling up from the car, and I still couldn't believe they were out. And I remember seeing them coming out of the car, and I was like crying, and I like ran outside, and I was like, oh my gosh, you really, like, this really happening, like, thank you God. And I was like hugging them, and like that moment, like, I really like remember like being able to like, I had never felt that way. I'm like being able to appreciate them and having them back in my life like that. And like, it's so surreal. And that they were able to get out of jail when they were on ICE hold and everything, and months had happened, like 4 months had already happened since everything had, gone down. And my mom was like, okay, she's like, I want us all to go celebrate New Year's at church. I want to thank God. I want us all to be together. And I remember coming back into the house, and we had to tell her like, well, like, yes, but my tia Rosa, which is her sister, is in the hospital, and she's in a coma. And my mom broke down, and all that was happening. And we still went to church that night, and it was like one huge party. I remember it was like the craziest feeling. Like, everyone was like shocked to see my parents. Everyone knew my parents from church. Everyone knew what was happening, and knew that there was no hope for them, and everyone was like shocked. And I remember we went to church, and after that we went to go visit my aunt to the hospital. And from all that was just like, I feel like the beginning, because after that my parents had to go to court, and they ended up having to move to California to serve their probation there. So my parents, after the New Year's Eve, going into 2015, I don't even know the years. Going into the new year, my parents ended up having to move to California for like 5 months. They lived there from January something to the end of May. And they had to live there because of, like I said, the probation. And they were given probation for 5 years. All the felonies that they were charged with like grand theft and conspiracy, and I don't know exactly all the other ones. They were all dropped. They ended up with like one misdemeanor, and they were just kind of told like, oh well, all the charges were dropped. And they had, in court and everything, they had showed us pictures from like 2 years ago, like how long they had been like with this case, and how big of an issue they had made it for them to be like, oh, well, we're dropping the case, and we're gonna see what's happening. And I'm like, what? I'm like, my parents just served jail, all this jail time and thing for you guys to say this. And my parents ended up having to have probation for 5 years. They were given a ticket for $15,000, and throughout that whole time, they had to pay lawyers, they had to pay the bail bonds. They tried fighting that, but I don't know exactly what happened, because I think that bail place ended up closing. They went like bankrupt or something went wrong. And that's their karma. But my parents did, that was, like I said, that was just the beginning. My parents went through a whole bunch of stuff. they ended up having to rebuild everything. You know, they lost a lot of stuff. They lost, you know, their business and everything. And my parents had to restart all over again. You know, they had lost their business. And I do say, like I said, things happen for a reason. And from all of this, my parents were able to fight their case and, you know, going through lawyer and lawyer. My parents ended up having, like, in total, like, I've asked my mom, you know, how much, like, in around the amount have you guys paid in lawyers, and they paid like over $35,000, and on top of the fees and probation they've had to pay, they actually just ended up paying that probation last year, which marked the 5 years that had happened. And, you know, like I said, things happen for a reason. But thank God, and from all of the situation, my parents are going to be able to become residents this upcoming year. And from all of this, you know, some good does happen, and we learn from situations like this. It's helped all of us, and yeah, and I'm very grateful for things that have happened. Well, whether they've been good or bad, we learn from them, and I'm thankful. And, you know, I just wanted to make video to kind of, you know, put it out there. I know a lot of people have gone through this same or similar situations with with their parents being in jail, and I just wanted to put my story out there and talk about it. And, you know, I feel like I'm more of an adult and more mature talking about the situation. I used to look at this in a complete different way and was like, why would this ever happen to me and my family? You know, why, you know, we're good people, like, it shouldn't be happening, but things happen for a reason. And I hope anyone going through a situation like this, or anything like with their parents in jail or anything, or immigration, always look for the light outside of the tunnel. You know, that's very corny, but it's true. Try to make the best out of a situation, and I know it's very hard. It's easier said than done, but it's definitely doable. Look at, you know, things that could have happened. I feel like, you know, this happened for a reason. Like, the job was very hectic and very dangerous, and I feel like my parents were, you know, they could have had health issues on the road, or, you know, they drove overnight, an accident could have happened. A lot of things could have happened and gone wrong. We learn from the situations and we move on. I'm going to be ending the video here, but I wanted to, you know, just share the story with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.
How many people were scared? Me too. I was really, really scared.
So, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, hoes.
Amigas, cola.